This is the latest development on the future of USAID after both President Trump and, maybe more importantly, Elon Musk said it needed to be shut down.
On Saturday, several people with Musk's Department of Government Efficiency showed up here at the USAID's headquarters demanding access to the building. On February 2nd, after over 60 years of being in Operation USAID, the agency assigned to provide help for foreign nations was suspended by the Trump administration after Elon Musk openly accused them of corruption and bad spending habits. The words he used to describe their alleged crimes were so vile that it caused many people to wonder what exactly he and his officials found at USAID's building in Washington. What was it that got him so upset, and who else knows about this? Join us as we find out what Elon and his team found at the USAID building. To fully understand the details behind Elon's bold claims, we have to briefly go back in time to 1961, the year when one U.S. president wanted to make things better not just for the United States but several other allied nations as well. This president was John F. Kennedy, and his efforts were the driving force behind the creation of USAID. By January of that year, over a decade had passed since the second global conflict. The United States was slowly becoming the most powerful force, and the future seemed brighter than ever for the country. But the president didn't want it to end there. According to old reports, President Kennedy wasn't satisfied with having the U.S. develop on its own. He wanted to carry other countries along as well. This way, smaller nations could also enjoy peace and stability in the years moving forward. To do this, he needed to establish a special agency that would be in charge of all the operations. This new agency would provide a lot of resources, education, and support to various struggling nations around the world. The result of this effort was USAID, a body that would soon become known for saving the lives of millions of people around the world. Established on November 3, 1961, through the Foreign Assistance Act signed early that morning, the United States Agency for International Development, USAID, was now in full swing. Even though it was built by the government, President Kennedy made it clear while signing the act that it was meant to function as a unit separate from the government. This way, USAID could focus on its work in other countries without getting affected by politics in America. A different administration with different priorities would not have much of an effect on the agency's operations since it functions entirely on its own. Many people liked the idea and were excited to see what plans the agency had in store for the world, but there were significant issues with it. First of all, even though USAID was an independent body designed to handle issues on its own, most of the money it needed still came from the government. This was because the money gotten from donations and partnerships from different charities was never enough for USAID to carry out its operations. As a result, the agency still had to rely on the government to give them the money they needed. To keep the money flowing in, they now had to follow the ever-changing rules of U.S. foreign policies while trying their best to be on good terms with the current administration. Every year, they had to justify their spending to Congress and the masses to prove they weren't corrupt. Those problems were just a few out of several others. The never-ending financial corruption and lack of trusted partners have only made things worse over the years, causing people to question a lot of things about their integrity. These problems make them wonder whether USAID is the charitable agency they claim to be, or just another false front for covering up a hidden agenda almost nobody knows about. And now here is the twist. Among those who believe there is a hidden agenda is former U.S. Representative Ron Paul, a retired politician who has been keeping a close eye on the agency's most recent activities and the people put in charge of it. This is where Elon Musk comes in. Last year, the tech billionaire was put in charge of Donald Trump's new Department of Government Efficiency, a body designed to supervise the spending of funds given by the authorities to agencies like USAID. According to Ron Paul, Elon Musk investigated USAID and found something unusual about their operations. When he asked them for access to their agency systems to know all the details of their latest operations, they refused. Wanting to get to the bottom of this, the president agreed with Elon to shut down all their operations for at least 90 days until they found out what was truly going on. Many staff members were put on leave, and over $40 billion was frozen until further notice. According to Ron, Elon mentioned finding strange documents in USAID's main building. He says these documents might expose the agency's corrupt practices behind the scenes. But before we go on, please keep in mind that those who have benefited from USAID have described the agency as having the most thoughtful and generous people in recent history. Their efforts have helped a lot of people in terms of healthcare, education, and disaster relief. Of course, many of us know these already, but Elon claims this is the part you probably never heard of. Elon Musk and USAID's operations. While Elon Musk has not denied the many good things USA has done for other countries, he has also never kept quiet about the few bad things he claims to have noticed. In recent times, he publicly called them out as a corrupt organization on February 2nd, and while he has not publicly presented his evidence for this, Ron Paul and many other sources claimed this was because he found evidence of corruption at USAID's main building in Washington. Later that day, Elon confirmed this in a live space by revealing that he had approached the president about the situation, and after talking about it in detail, the people voted for major government reform, and that's what democracy is all about. They both agreed to shut it down. Though the White House didn't give an official statement about this immediately, Elon Musk made a post on X just over an hour later that confirmed they were already working on it. In light of this, Elon stated that the biggest problem he's had with the agency has always been their questionable spending habits in recent years. For example, this year alone, they plan to spend a minimum of $40 billion in helping people affected by natural disasters in various places around the world. As of last year, they spent $43 billion in total and over $70 billion in 2023. And while this sounded amazing to a lot of people, Elon wasn't all that impressed by the numbers. As far as he could tell, the total amount of money USA had spent last year didn't match the things they ended up doing, implying that a huge chunk of the money they were given by the government was not managed properly. This is a constitutional crisis that we are in today. And that wasn't all. There have also been past reports of USAID's money either getting misdirected along the way or lost in the hands of corrupt politicians under their watch. It is also well known at this point that USA works with NGOs accused in the past of either being too expensive to operate or unable to help as they should. Some of the contracts were said to be inflated, while a few of them involved politically connected groups that had little to do with charity, implying that most of the money was used to compensate groups that didn't need it while ignoring the people who did. Nobody knew about this early on because USA keeps details about their spending close to the chest. This was most obvious when Elon's team at the Department of Government Efficiency tried to gain access to all of their spending records on February 1st when two senior USA security officials stood. In their way, these officials claimed that Elon Musk and his team didn't have the right amount of clearances needed for this operation. After calling them out in public the following day, both officials were put on administrative leave. With no one left to stand in their way, Elon Musk and his team got to work immediately. In a matter of hours, Elon's officials gained access to everything they wanted and took control over all of USA's control systems. Musk had placed where they have access to the private data of millions of students and families. Simply put, they were now able to lock out employees and read all the agency's emails and records of those who were involved in money spending within the U.S. and beyond. While this action was done to reduce corruption and hold them accountable, it was also where many people believed Elon crossed the line. How did he do this, allegedly? Well, barely a few hours after he publicly called them out, 5 USAID officials reported to The Guardian that Elon's team may have gotten access to special tools they called sensitive compartmented information facilities. These were special tools used for top-secret communications, and Elon had just gained access without having the legal permissions required to do so. What made them so sure about this was because of the way he called them out not long after gaining access. As far as they were concerned, the only way Elon Musk would call him out like that with so much confidence is if he had gotten illegal access to very private information without being properly informed of the motives behind each of those secret operations. In response, one of those who served on Elon's advisory board wrote on X that they didn't access any of USA's private files without having all the legal requirements met, including the private intelligence reports reported by AP. Not long after Elon's officials gained control of all their systems, USA continued to suspend staff members, especially those who worked in the legislative arms of the agency. These staff members reported waking up that morning only to realize they couldn't gain access to their emails anymore, leading to over 100 staff members being sent off. Just a few days later, it got so bad that those who weren't sent out yet reported coming to work each day, waiting to get the letter that sent them away. As of the making of this video, President Trump has put all global operations on hold as part of his America First policy. This was an initiative set up to put the country's needs first before carrying other nations along. While the reason behind this sounds solid on paper, the operation has sent shockwaves around the world. It seemed many struggling nations had relied too much on the USA to help them in times of need. Among those affected, the most were field hospitals and Thai refugee camps, landmine clearance in war zones, and drugs for treating millions of people suffering from deadly diseases like HIV. These programs have been put on hold, and the only ones that are still ongoing are the ones with human lives on the line. Even with these stakes involved, it seems all the programs are at risk of getting eliminated. As of 2023, USAID gave out over $70 billion to assist other countries in their operations. Thanks to even more funding from the government, USAID provided over 40% of charities tracked by the United Nations last year, and yet the problems in these places persist as if nothing happened. With this in mind, Elon hopes that his department will be able to cut down costs at the agency to find out the right amount of money they need for their operations. Based on the figure they arrive at, the president will decide on whether to let it function at a lower cost, bring it completely under the control of the State Department, or dissolve it completely. In the live spaces on X, Elon expressed hope that the agency wouldn't be wiped off completely. To make sure of that, Special Marine Corps veteran J.D. Vance was put in charge of figuring this out. But the problem only got worse from there. On February 3rd, just after a day of close investigation by Elon's team, the tech billionaire was a lot less hopeful, believing this time that the agency was beyond repair. The words he used to describe the agency's operations were too strong to mention in this video, and so vile that they caused people to wonder what exactly Elon and his team found in that building. Whatever it was so difficult to bear that Matt Hobson, USAID's new chief of staff hired by the Trump administration, quickly resigned from his position immediately after. He was one out of 8 officials hired by President Trump, and current rumors suggest he won't be the last, especially with more information getting revealed in the coming weeks. While Elon Musk has chosen not to reveal the exact details of what his team found to the public, it seems another person has decided to do it for him. This person was none other than former U.S. Representative Ron Paul, a man who had been keeping a close eye on USAID's operations for over a decade. So brace yourself, dear viewer, because the answers he gave were a bit shocking. Ron Paul and USAID's records. Before we move on, please keep in mind that what we are about to show you is what Ron says Elon revealed behind closed doors. So, to fully understand what it means, we have to see things from his perspective. According to Ron, Elon's reason for calling them out goes far beyond bad spending habits and misdirecting of resources. He believes that USAID shouldn't be allowed to exist as far as the Constitution is concerned because it takes money from American taxpayers and gives it to other nations without legal permission. He argues that the U.S. government was made to help its people first before sending money overseas. While President Kennedy put up the agency to help countries overseas struggling with difficult problems, what Elon's officials found at the building implies that the agency has gone further than he intended and does no good for anybody in the long run. Right now, the agency is allegedly collecting billions of dollars from hardworking taxpayers to help other countries when there are problems within the country that should be addressed first. Ron argues that USAID should be funded by public donations and private charities as an independent body, just as it was designed to be. One great example uncovered by Elon's officials happened back in 2019, and once again in 2023, USAID sent millions of dollars to Afghanistan to help their struggling economy. The latest one happened when the U.S. was still recovering from high inflation. Gas prices were just coming down from the high rates they were in 2022, and many people were struggling to make ends meet. What made it very painful for many people was that most of the money given to Afghanistan to improve their economy was lost due to corruption, implying that the money didn't even help the people it was meant for. And that wasn't the worst part. According to Ron, what Elon Musk and his team found in that building implied that USAID had never put in the effort to make sure the money was spent properly. Ron argues there are several ways they could have done this. First, they could have given the money to local organizations and NGOs with direct communication with the public to make sure help goes to those who truly need it. They could have also given the resources on the condition of giving back spending reports with results showing that the money was spent properly. There were also better options for helping them than directly sending cash to the government. Instead of that, they could have sent direct resources most rich people didn't need but could have helped the masses in a lot of ways. Even if resources had to be sent as cash, they still could have been sent using blockchain and biometrics to make sure they reached the right people without the authorities taking a cut. This example shows just one out of the several donations to other countries that accumulated to well over $100 billion spent from 2021 up to this point. Based on what the record showed, while billions of dollars were sent out to help other countries, many Americans were struggling with serious local issues like bad roads, expensive health care, and unrepaired facilities in public schools. It was clear from the records examined by Elon that they didn't need such a huge amount of money for their operations, yet they asked for these amounts each year without fully disclosing how they spent it. Keep in mind that all this was happening while many young Americans were struggling with college debt, unpaid bills were piling up in people's homes, and the price of groceries was becoming unaffordable. These facts made Elon very angry, leading to the viral posts on X that got people talking. But that was just the tip of the iceberg. According to Ron, while leaders at USAID have always believed that their efforts have improved America's relationship with other countries, the undisclosed records examined by Elon's officials seem to align with a much different pattern. A short glimpse at recent history shows that there have been times when countries receiving help have later turned against the U.S. or used the money for harmful things. There have been many cases of violence in developing countries that were carried out with tools provided by USAID. Because of this, Elon and Ron believe their operations aren't just unfair to hardworking Americans who have no choice but to pay for it, but have also contributed to problems faced by those countries they are trying to help. One great example found in the records aligns with what happened in Egypt way back in 2011 during the Arab Spring, when the people protested about their poor living conditions and high cost of living. Given the billions of dollars sent by the U.S. to that country for over 5 years, Elon believes the Arab Spring situation should never have been a thing to begin with. Later on, it was discovered that certain corrupt leaders had been using USAID's money to strengthen its military when it could have been used to improve the roads, schools, and hospitals that needed help for well over a decade. When the protest got out of hand, things went tragic in an instant, showing how USAID's funding only made things worse by supporting leaders who made life harder for the people. Still, on the issues found in the records, let's turn the clock back to 2001 when Afghanistan was going through very difficult times with its military. After years of support and funding from USAID to help the country grow and become stable, things only went out of hand once the U.S. allowed them to handle things on their own. As a result, most of the resources sent by USAID fell back into the hands of the same hostile group the U.S. had struggled to remove years before, implying that all the sacrifices made to promote peace had only caused more problems in the long run. Turning a few pages back to 2010, Elon and his officials came across yet another problem in Haiti. That year was when the capital experienced one of the most devastating earthquakes in the country's history, and with a lot of homes, schools, and hospitals destroyed, they needed a lot of help. Naturally, USAID got involved, sending over $1 billion for the country to start rebuilding its capital. As you would expect at this point, a lot of the money filled the pockets of rich elites instead of building the homes and hospitals needed by the poor. USAID had made another wrong decision by funding large foreign companies within the country instead of local businesses. All that did was hurt the country's economy even more, and to this day, Haiti still struggles with abject poverty, showing how USAID's billion-dollar involvement did not help anybody. Worse, USAID's attempts to help those in need once caused them to get accused of helping rebel groups in countries like Venezuela, making it look like the U.S. was now getting involved in domestic disputes that had nothing to do with them. As a result, the bad leaders doubled down on their bad efforts, causing even more problems for the people of those lands. With this in mind, Ron believes the reason Elon is hellbent on ending USAID is because they try to help by controlling how other countries run their governments. Because of this, all they do is end up taking sides and making problems worse, unknowingly helping corrupt leaders and causing more conflicts. But here comes the biggest problem: media manipulation. According to Ron, one of the things Elon uncovered on February 2nd was signs of media manipulation. Ron went as far as saying that USA's recent efforts in helping other countries have been nothing more than a false front for the media to cover up what they have been truly up to in recent years. He argues that USA had been working behind the scenes to manipulate media outlets in recent countries they supported. Most of the things uncovered by Elon's officials at the USA building should have been common knowledge if not for the agency doing the best they can to keep their mouth shut. Simply put, if any major news outlet dared spread the news that USA was picking sides, they would stop supporting the country immediately. So to keep the money flowing in, these news outlets have always done their best to show them in a positive light to avoid losing support. Elon Musk and Ron Paul both affirmed that there are currently no independent news sources in places still receiving support from USA. It is so bad, according to Elon, that all we know today about the conflict in Ukraine is only what the agency wants us to know. Ron called this a closed propaganda loop, a system designed to cancel free thinking and only let the world know what the agency approves of. He explained this in a video recently posted on X, where he talked about the things discovered by Elon's officials in full detail. According to him, even Congress has unknowingly become a victim of this, as the facts they work with for most of their operations still rely a lot on the mainstream U.S. reporters assigned to these places. If you thought this was the end of it, now may be a good time to sit down and brace yourself, as Elon's next claim will blow you away. On February 3rd, Elon Musk accused USAID of unknowingly contributing to research efforts that only cause more harm than good. He said that while the agency was trying its best to support scientific research and help countries prepare for future health emergencies, a simple misdirection of funds caused a lot of the money to get into the wrong hands. Thanks to this, the germs they studied became much stronger and resistant to medicine, and the outbreak was a nightmare for the whole world. However, without evidence to support this claim, it was debunked almost immediately by trusted news outlets. But with Elon still keeping a lot of details close to the chest, it is understandable why many people are still concerned. Ron Paul believes that if this is true, USAID should have been a lot more careful about where their money was going and who was in charge of the research. With the evidence we have now, it is safe to say that USA is innocent of this accusation, and Ron argues that they would have never been in this problem if they had been more open and accountable to begin with. As far as Elon is concerned, most of those in the agency before the Trump administration were more concerned with influencing the politics of other countries than providing the help they needed. According to Elon, way back in 2003, USAID was directly supporting rebels who fought to establish a new government that was more friendly to the U.S. This happened in Georgia over 20 years ago, and while people today still see this as a huge win for freedom and democracy, Elon believes it was an example of USA using taxpayer money to change leaders in other countries. Nobody believed this back then until 5 years later. You see, Georgia in 2008 was going through difficult times with neighboring countries, including Russia, and instead of letting the people of Georgia decide on their own, USA had gotten even more involved, causing bigger problems that inevitably led to the clash against Russia later that year. Ukraine was another great example of this. Since 2014, USA has sent billions of dollars to Ukraine to help them support democracy, fight corruption, and strengthen the economy. However, Ron Paul tells us the records examined by Elon's officials show that a lot of the money was spent on supporting political parties that aligned more with American values, leading to the protests and eventual establishment of the new government that allies itself with the U.S. over the one that was more friendly with Russia. As you might expect, their relationship with Russia only grew worse over the years, leading to the ongoing conflict that is still making headlines. This conflict has now caused a lot of suffering for those same people USAID was trying to help, and Ron argues that the relationship between both countries would have been in a much better place if the agency didn't meddle in what never concerned them. Elon agrees with this as well, believing that Georgia and Ukraine have what it takes to achieve peace on their own without the agency getting involved. When a bad foreign government knows the United States is spending billions of dollars to support those who disagree with them, all they would do is react in a very harsh way and make things worse for ordinary people who don't care as much about politics. Worst of all, these well-meaning attempts that have unintentionally caused a lot of suffering were funded with taxpayer money, implying that millions of struggling Americans today are unknowingly paying for programs that keep other nations from deciding their own future. Right now, there seems to be no hope on the horizon for USAID, as the latest news only paints it in a negative light. Right now, it seems President Trump wants to merge USAID with the U.S. Department of State so it can continue operating under the close eye of the administration. Elon still insists that it's best to get rid of it entirely, and until the 90-day suspension comes to a close a few months from now, we just have to wait and see what the future has in store for USAID. So what do you think? Will USAID cease to exist in the coming months as Elon would have it, or will it keep functioning under the Department of State as the president prefers? Let us know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, please make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Also, click on the next video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.